Well, you all knew we'd probably see the arbitrary waveform generator again. And here we are. So we are back in the shop for part 3 of the installment of rebuilding the GTV6 tachometer. We can see that everything's all back together. I have redone the faded colors on the red line and orange line. It's got a new needle with I've installed a counterweight on the back of the hub on the needle to counteract the action of the needle. When I went over bumps, I found when I first threw this in the car, after it was all done and fired it up, it worked. So I went for a quick drive and noticed that the needle was bobbing when I hit bumps. So adding a counterweight, like so, is a really good way of counteracting the action of the road. You can see that I have the circuit board for the air core drive mounted to the back of there with my pigtails and stuff like that. You can see you can still kind of access the bulbs. You just got to undo the screw that's holding this board to the back of the up there. Everything's all wired up together. Like I said, it's already been in the car and it does work. It just needs to be calibrated now, and that's why I have the arbitrary waveform generator sitting on my bench. I'll quickly show everybody that it's working. Maybe I'll do a driving video and everything. So yeah, it was definitely a little bit of work to get to this stage, but now that we're there, I think the thing is awesome. So what we'll do is we'll put this up to about 3,000 RPM. Obviously, you do the math. I'm not going to tell you guys how to get the right frequency of the engine running, but it's not that difficult to figure out. I mean, obviously, 4-cycle engine, how many sparks per rev, you got 6 cylinders, how many times over a second, blah, 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 blah. You can find the frequency of what the coil is going to be firing out. So we'll set it to 150 hertz, which is going to be 3,000 RPM. We're going to hit and go. So you can see the action of the needle is very, very fast, very responsive. So it's definitely a very responsive action. And we'll just bring it back down and turn it off. So it's a very responsive needle. You can see 3,000 RPM was a little high. I do know that this reads high because I had it in my car and noticed it read high. That's why we are calibrating it today. So yeah, very, very happy with how this is. One note, if you decide to do a job like this, I ended up, as you saw in one of my old video, actually I'll bring you over to this, on the housing, on my old video, I think part 2 of the videos, I showed that I used some shiny aluminum foil on the inside of there to improve the illumination. I did some other stuff to improve the illumination. That actually proved to be a mistake. It worked, like, don't get me wrong. The instrument was bright. It looked awesome. But the problem is when I had it next to the other instruments beside it and on the dash, up the temperature gauge and fuel gauge and all that stuff, when I had it next to that, it just looked really off because this was so bloody bright and everything else was dim. So I ended up actually removing the aluminum foil and just making sure that the inside of the housing was as white as possible. I used a special, like peroxide. I won't lie. I used pure peroxide to get the damn housing white. Nasty stuff, but it got the housing white again. And on the inside where it's really needed to reflect the light. And then I ended up actually where the air core motor was mounted to the faceplate there. I actually used a whole bunch of insulating foam, like black window foam, to actually mimic the shape of this inside of the housing. I just built up the foam until it was just a square blob roughly this size. Because what was actually happening is the illumination was so bright, you could actually see it through the black. So the black was even glowing. It was so damn bright. So you gotta cut that down a bit. You gotta cut the lighting down a bit and have it so that the lighting is only lit through the edges, like it was originally, because this was obviously in the way. So you gotta mimic that again, because I mean, like I said, it was bright, but it just looked wrong. So yeah, like I said, very happy with how this turned out. I love the way it worked in the car. It was nice having a very responsive tach for a change instead of the lethargic thing that would like. Just to get an idea how bad the tach was, is in first and second gear, it would bounce off the rev limiter and the needle was still traveling up towards 5. That's how slow it was. So I'm glad to get rid of that.